My name is Josephine, 36 years old, and right there in the divorce court in Boston, my life was torn apart. In front of lawyers and cold stacks of paperwork, my ex-husband, Adam, linked arms with his new wife Savannah and gave a mocking smile. "You're nothing but the past. An old thing left behind." On Savannah's wrist gleamed a diamond watch that outpriced the settlement they offered, a number meant to belittle my years. I signed the papers in humiliation, stepped out into the gray rain, and thought I had lost everything. But in that very moment, an unexpected phone call came, and it changed my life completely. Have you ever been belittled, cast aside at the most painful moment of your life? Leave a comment and share your feelings, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and stay with me to hear what awaited me after that fateful call. Do you want to know what happened next? I was born and raised in a small coastal town in Maine. My parents were simple laborers, working tirelessly to provide for my education. I was an only child, so my childhood was spent with evenings reading in our small wooden house, listening to the sound of waves outside the window. While other kids loved running on the beach, I buried myself in history books, fascinated by stories of fallen empires and figures once thought invincible but swallowed by time. That passion led me to work at a university library when I grew up. I was happy in the world of books, where every diary and every old letter held a piece of its writer's soul. Others thought it was a dull job, but to me it was how the past stayed alive, a thread connecting yesterday's stories to today. Then I met Adam. He was a law student, tall, confident, with a smile that lit up the entire lecture hall. I remember the first time he walked into the library, pretending to ask about a set of casebooks he clearly didn't need. He wanted to talk. We spoke the whole evening about law, about famous American trials, and I was surprised to see he truly cared about how I saw history as lessons for the present. "You're not like other girls," he said, his eyes bright. "You make me want to be a better man, someone who could build a whole world with you." I believed him. I believed enough to leave Maine and follow him to Boston, believing we'd build a family, a life together, where I would keep doing the work I loved and he would rise in the legal world. In the early years, Adam was tender and caring. He'd hold me in our tiny apartment, saying one day we'd own a beautiful home overlooking the Charles River, and I'd have my own reading room filled with the histories I loved. But the dream began to fracture. When Adam graduated and joined a prestigious law firm, his world shifted. Our quiet dinners disappeared, replaced by lavish parties where I felt lost among designer gowns and conversations about investments, real estate, and markets. I still wore simple dresses from my favorite local store, and I began noticing the way his eyes flickered whenever colleagues asked what I did. "She works at the library," he'd reply with a half smile, as if it were some quaint hobby rather than real work. I tried convincing myself he was tired, that the stress of work had changed him. But the signs grew clear. One day, I caught an email alert about a large withdrawal from our joint account. When I asked, Adam brushed me off. "I invested. Don't worry about it. You wouldn't understand these things." But unease grew when I saw a brand new watch on his wrist and in his car, a luxury handbag I knew I had never received. I first heard Savannah's name at a party. She was much younger, her blonde curls perfect, her eyes sly. I caught the look between them, the quick touch of hands beneath the table, and my heart plummeted. When I confronted Adam, he didn't deny it. "Joe, you need to understand. You belong to the world of books in the past. I need someone who can walk with me into this world, who understands this pace." He said it as casually as discussing a contract. I thought I could save it, that our marriage was worth the years we'd shared. But when I discovered Adam had been secretly transferring most of our joint funds to Savannah, I knew he hadn't just betrayed my heart, he'd betrayed the last shred of trust. Maybe the seeds were planted long before. I remembered my family in Maine. When my grandmother died, leaving a small seaside house, my mother's siblings tore each other apart in court to claim the land. I was young, but I remembered the fights, remembered my mother's devastated eyes as her siblings cast her aside. The house was sold and the fractures in the family never healed. Since then I'd always carried a dread. Inheritance brings betrayal. I hated the greed that shattered my family, and I thought Adam would be different. I was wrong. One night I came home to find Adam asleep on the couch. His phone lit up. A message from Savannah flashed. "I can't wait any longer. When can we go public?" I froze in place in the dark, suitcase still in my hand after returning from visiting my parents in Maine. At that moment, I knew I was nothing but an outsider in my own home. I sat by the window staring out at Boston's lights. My youth had been poured into a dream, and that dream was collapsing. Yet deep down, the feeling was familiar, like watching my family break apart over an inheritance. When I told my mother, she gripped my hand, voice trembling. "Josephine, don't repeat my mistakes. You saw what fighting over inheritance did to us. Don't lose yourself over betrayal." Her words echoed for months, especially today in the divorce court. When Adam slid the contract across the table, when Savannah glanced at me with her triumphant smile, I remembered my mother's siblings casting her aside, her bitter eyes. And I wondered, was this fate repeating itself? I signed, my hand trembling but my spirit unbroken. I had lost a husband, money, trust, but deep down I still held one thing: my own resolve. I left the courthouse in the storm, rain soaking through my thin coat, my mind blank. The crowded Boston streets felt like a stage where I no longer had a role. I had just signed away a 10-year marriage, left with a pittance and a broken heart. I thought it was the end of me. But then the old phone in my pocket buzzed. "Miss Josephine?" A deep, precise male voice came through. "My name is Richard Coleman, senior attorney at Blackwell Partners. I need to see you immediately. This is regarding the estate of Mr. Edward Blackwell. He has just passed away." I froze on the wet sidewalk. Edward Blackwell. That name echoed from another life. I'd heard my father mention him when I was a child. A mysterious finance magnate, founder of Helios Global, rarely seen in public. I had met him only once at a distant funeral. He had shaken my hand quietly and asked, "What are you reading?" I'd answered, "A book on the Tudor dynasty." He gave a faint smile and walked away, leaving me with a strange impression. Eyes that seemed to see straight through, as if he could read the future. Now he was dead, and a powerful lawyer was calling me in a tone that left no room for refusal. "Perhaps you've mistaken me," I stammered. "I have no connection to him. My family, we weren't close." "There is no mistake, miss," Coleman replied, his voice sharp as a blade. "Please be at our Boston office within 1 hour. This matter cannot wait." He read the address, a towering glass building in the city center. I heard the steady fall of rain, my heart pounding. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to go back to my small Cambridge apartment, wrap myself in blankets and forget. But another part, the same part that once made me dig through old books searching for buried secrets, told me I had to go. The Blackwell Partners building loomed like a modern fortress. Marble floors gleamed, crystal chandeliers sparkled above the high ceiling. I stepped in, drenched, my wet coat making me feel even more out of place. A young secretary in a black suit approached, offering a professional smile. "Miss Hayes? Please follow me. Coleman is waiting." I followed her down a thick carpeted hallway, past solemn oil paintings. A large wooden door swung open, revealing a spacious conference room with gleaming wood-paneled walls. At the head of a long ebony table sat a silver-haired man, posture straight, face angular, gray-blue eyes piercing. "Miss Josephine Hayes," he said, rising to extend his hand. "Thank you for coming so quickly. I am Richard Coleman." His handshake was firm, cold, authoritative. I sat in a leather chair, feeling as if I were in a courtroom. This time, a witness to a strange case I did not yet understand. Coleman opened a thick file and set it before me. "As you know, Mr. Edward Blackwell passed away last week at the age of 96. He was the founder and sole owner of Helios Global, a private corporation valued at approximately $80 billion. I looked up, stunned. 80 billion? The number was beyond imagination for someone like me, who once counted every dollar just to buy a used book. "And his will," Coleman continued slowly, "named you as the primary heir." I let out a soft, choking laugh. "You must be joking. I'm only a librarian. I have no connection to him beyond meeting him once as a child." Why me?" Coleman closed the file, his gaze steady. "Mr. Blackwell never did anything by accident. He once told me, that girl values the past. And only someone who values the past can protect the future." I tried to find words, but Coleman lifted a hand to stop me. "However, the conditions of the will are not simple. You cannot merely take the inheritance and live quietly. Blackwell wanted to test you. You must serve as chairwoman of Helios Global's board of directors for 1 year. If you are ousted by a vote of no confidence, or if you resign before the term ends, the entire fortune and company will transfer to the Global Heritage Foundation. You will walk away with nothing. The room fell silent. I could hear my heartbeat pounding. 1 year. Chairwoman of the board. Me, someone who had never attended a shareholders meeting, never written a financial report. You're telling me, my voice cracked, that I must run an entire economic empire? Yes. Coleman nodded, unwavering. That is Mr. Blackwell's final will. He believed you have something the others lack: integrity and vision. Helios Global has become a battlefield of power struggles. If you survive 1 year, you will prove him right. I clenched my hands beneath the table, remembering Adam's face when he mocked me. And now, another world was telling me that very thing could save an empire. But I don't know anything about running a corporation, I admitted, my voice trembling. Coleman's lips curved slightly, a smile caught between encouragement and challenge. You will learn. And I will guide you. But remember, the board will seize on any opening to move you out. Especially Charles Mercer, the current CEO. He assumed he would inherit leadership. He will see you as a mistake to be corrected. The name Charles Mercer passed my ears like a looming shadow. I swallowed hard, struggling for breath. So, if I agree? I asked quietly. Coleman slid the file toward me. Then your life will change forever. But if you refuse, you will receive nothing more than the divorce settlement you signed this morning. I looked down at the copy of the will, the bold signature, Edward Blackwell. Each letter seemed to glow before my eyes. I remembered his gaze when I was 17, the gaze of someone who saw something in me that I didn't yet know myself. Part of me wanted to run. But another part, the one that endured Adam's scorn, the one that had watched my family fracture over inheritance, rose within me. This could be the chance to rewrite the story, to no longer be the outsider cast aside. I lifted my head, meeting Coleman's eyes. All right. I'll try. In that instant, my voice didn't shake anymore. It rang like a vow. Coleman gave a slight nod, as if he had known my answer all along. Good, Miss Hayes. Prepare yourself. The next year will be the fiercest battle of your life. The conference room lights reflected in his eyes, and in mine, a new spark began to burn. The spark of challenge, of a path I had never imagined stepping onto. The news broke like a storm the next morning. I woke in my old Cambridge apartment, hadn't even sipped my coffee when my phone lit up with headlines. Librarian inherits 80 billion empire. My picture, snapped as I entered Blackwell Partners in my rain-soaked coat, splashed across every site from the Wall Street Journal to cheap tabloids. I sat frozen, coffee trembling in my hands, spilling hot liquid over my fingers I didn't bother to wipe. Within hours, reporters and cameras swarmed outside my door. They shouted my name, flung meaningless questions. Did you really know Edward Blackwell? What will you do with this massive fortune? Do you think you're capable of leading Helios Global? I pulled the curtains shut, heart pounding. Part of me wanted to bury my head under a pillow and let the world explode. But another part urged me to listen, to watch, because I knew I wasn't the anonymous Josephine of yesterday anymore. That evening, turning on the TV, I saw Adam's face. He appeared on a primetime talk show, sitting relaxed in a gray suit, eyes glistening as though with true sorrow. Josephine, she's a fragile soul, he said softly with feigned compassion. I fear this burden will crush her. She's always lived in the past and books. I only hope those around her ensure she has the right support in this transition. The audience gasped, the host tilted his head in sympathy. Adam knew how to perform. He had once promised me love with that same voice. Now he used it to plant the idea that I was unfit, unstable for my new role. My grip tightened on the remote, throat tightening. And then Savannah appeared, revealing the deeper trap. She sat beside Adam in a cream-colored dress, her hand resting lightly on her stomach. We are expecting a baby, she said, eyes shimmering with staged joy. Adam only worries for Josephine. She once mattered to him, and we don't want to see her hurt. The host leaned forward dramatically. You mean, Josephine's ex-husband is about to have a true heir? Savannah smiled, not denying it. Studio lights glinted off the diamond watch on her wrist, the very one that had made me feel small and poor in the divorce court. I switched off the TV, breath ragged as if I'd been punched. All of America now saw me not as a woman escaping betrayal, but as a confused ghost, a librarian lost in the world of wealth and power. Adam and Savannah had already spun their narrative, leaving me cast as the pitiful supporting role. The next day, Richard Coleman arrived at my apartment with 2 large security officers. He spoke briefly. "You cannot stay here any longer, Josephine. You are becoming a target." "But this is my home," I protested, voice shaking. "I'm not used to glamorous places." "Mr. Blackwell left you a safer one," Coleman replied. "The Manhattan penthouse. It was built like a fortress. You must protect yourself before the board seizes any excuse to declare you unfit." I had no choice. They led me out the back door through a trash-strewn alley into a sleek black SUV. As the car pulled away, I looked back at the tiny apartment where I once read books late into the night, where I waited for Adam after his long parties. Now it seemed small and foreign, like a chapter of life sealed shut. The Blackwell penthouse in Manhattan sat on the 70th floor of a glass tower, overlooking Central Park. When the elevator doors opened, I stepped into a space so vast my footsteps echoed on marble floors. Glass walls stretched from floor to ceiling, the city glowing below like another universe. "This is your base now, 24/7 security, a private system and an on-call team." I nodded, but my heart felt heavy. Amid all that luxury, I felt locked in a gilded cage. Everything was perfect but cold. There was no creak of old wood, no scent of old books, no sound of rain tapping on wooden windows like in Maine. That night, I walked down the long hallway leading to the bedroom, soft lights casting my shadow across the white walls. The room was so large that I felt empty inside. The bed could fit 3 people, but there was only me. I stayed by the window, looking down at the rush of traffic below, the lights like streaks of stars that never stopped moving. I whispered to myself, "What am I doing here?" The echo in the empty room made me shiver. I thought of my parents in Maine, thought of how my mother would place her hand on my cheek and say, "You must be strong, Josephine. Don't let inheritance become a burden." Those words now felt like a premonition. The next day, when Blackwell Partners media team showed me the latest articles, I felt my blood boil. On the cover of a financial magazine, my photo had been spliced next to Adam and Savannah. The big headline read, "The Billionaire Librarian. Can she survive?" The piece was filled with doubt. A librarian making $36,000 a year now controls an empire worth $80 billion. The financial world is asking, is she clear-minded enough to run it, or is this merely a tragic turning point? Coleman flipped through the pages, then stopped, looking straight at me. "See? They won't give you an easy chance. Adam planted the seed and Savannah is feeding it with that pregnancy. If you collapse now, everything shifts into their hands." I clenched my fists until my knuckles turned white. In my head, Adam's words from the other day echoed. "You're nothing but the past." I knew I couldn't back down even if the whole world saw me as a joke. In the days that followed, the penthouse became both fortress and prison. The vast windows gave me an endless view, but they also reminded me that outside was a storm of public opinion waiting to swallow me whole. The phone rang nonstop. Hundreds of messages from unknown numbers, from reporters, from people claiming to be distant relatives, who suddenly remembered me. I faced the mirror, studying my reflection, eyes swollen from sleepless nights, but deep within them I saw something else. A gaze no longer only that of a humble librarian, but of someone the world had forced into the lead role of a brutal play. And I knew that even if this gilded cage suffocated me, I had to learn to live in it, or it would devour me. On my first day walking into the conference room on the 80th floor of Helios Global, it felt like stepping into a modern Roman arena. Glass walls stretched for a panoramic view of Manhattan, but inside, the eyes of 11 board members were what truly made me feel breathless. I sat in the finely carved ebony chair at the head of the table, the chair that had once belonged to Edward Blackwell. It felt like sitting on a throne, and everyone here was waiting for me to fall off it. Charles Mercer sat across from me. He was in his early 50s, silver hair neatly combed, a deep blue suit tailored to perfection. He had once been Edward's most loyal right-hand man, but the look he gave me carried the contempt and patience of a predator. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mercer began, his voice resonant, "we are facing a golden opportunity. South America is opening up the world's largest lithium mining operation. If Helios invests now, we can dominate the global energy battery market for the next decade. Deal value, $15 billion. Some members nodded. Lithium. I had heard of it in clean energy reports. Mercer pressed a remote, and the screen lit up with profit charts and growth projections. Other companies may hesitate, he continued, but Helios Global leads. If Edward were alive, he wouldn't hesitate. I gripped the cover of the folder before me. In the past few days, I had been buried in the archives Edward Blackwell left behind. Old files, reports that never reached the boardroom. I had found the name, Proyecto del Valle. That lithium mine was not new. Edward had considered it 15 years ago. And in that file there was an environmental report marked in red, never brought to light. I drew a long breath and looked straight at Mercer. I have a question. The room went dead quiet. Perhaps they thought I would fumble and ask something naive, the kind of thing a librarian who's never run a company might say. Mercer arched an eyebrow, ready to smile at my awkwardness. I reviewed the original 2007 environmental report for Proyecto del Valle. I opened the folder and placed an old photocopy on the table. It states clearly, arsenic levels in the groundwater exceeded the standard tenfold, and nearby communities recorded hundreds of deaths due to heavy metal poisoning. For that reason, Mr. Blackwell struck the deal out. He wrote, "Profit built on poisoned ground is no profit at all." I read each word slowly. The room sank into heavy silence. Mercer faltered. He blinked, then quickly regained composure. "That was only a preliminary report," he said, his voice strained but still authoritative. "The situation is different now. New treatment technologies will address." "I don't see any new report in the files," I cut in. My voice wasn't loud, but it rang clear in the glass room. "I see evidence that Mr. Blackwell examined it closely and decided this was a deal a wise person would never pursue. You may believe the profit numbers on your charts. I choose to believe the facts in the documents." One board member, Linda Howard, silver hair in a tight bun, known for caution, leaned in to look at the photocopy. Her gaze softened. A few others exchanged looks, hesitation clear on their faces. Mercer ground his teeth. "You don't understand this industry, Josephine. Decisions like this must be judged by economic vision, not by sentimental attachment to old paperwork. I'm a librarian, yes. My job is to find the truth in the pages others overlook." Blackwell believed Helios's value lies not only in profit but in how we earn it. I cannot, and will not, sign off on a deal built on the deaths of innocent people. My words fell cold and sharp as a blade. Silence stretched on. I could hear the wall clock ticking, heavier than my own heartbeat. "At last, Mrs. Howard set her hand on the table. "I agree with the chairwoman. I don't want this company entangled in another international human rights lawsuit. We've paid enough in the past." Another member, Mr. Jacobs, a longtime investor, nodded slightly. "Miss Hayes is right. Profit margins don't offset legal risk." One assent after another rose, and Mercer's expression grew tighter by the second. He realized he had been blocked on his opening move. I closed the file, my hands still trembling beneath the table but my voice steady. "Then the lithium deal is rejected. Let's move on to the next item on the agenda." The meeting ended after 2 tense hours. As the members filed out, I remained seated, exhaling deeply. The door closed, leaving only Mercer and me. He pushed himself up slowly, approached and lowered his voice. "You think you won today? Don't be naive, Josephine. This board is not yours. Helios is mine. And I will take it back." I looked up and met his eyes, cold, seething with hatred. Fear flickered inside me. But I remembered Edward Blackwell's shaky handwriting on that old note. I rose to my full height, meeting his stare without blinking. "Helios belongs to the truth," I said softly. "And I will do whatever it takes to keep it that way." Mercer clenched his jaw, then spun on his heel, his footsteps striking hard against the stone floor. That night, back at the penthouse, I paused at the window looking down at Central Park. The city still blazed with light while I trembled with exhaustion. But deep in my chest I knew I had passed the first trial, and thrown the opening punch back. I whispered to myself, if Edward can see, he'll know I didn't sign a death sentence. I am not the past. I am the one who will protect the future. After the first meeting where I stopped the lithium deal, I knew Mercer wouldn't sit still. He wasn't the kind to concede because of an old report or a few lines quoted from Edward Blackwell. And sure enough, a few weeks later I felt the steady beat of covert attacks. Stories began to appear on financial sites and even tabloids. Unstable librarian, can she carry Helios? Made-up tales about me spread. That I had been treated for depression, that I had panic attacks in the library, that I was mentally unstable after my husband left. I read each cold line, my heart squeezed tight. I remembered the humiliation Adam dealt me in the divorce court, and now those words returned like a nightmare broadcast through hundreds of thousands of shares. Richard Coleman, his face stern, handed me the morning stack of newspapers. Mercer is trying to hit the easiest weak point, he said, public trust. If the public starts believing you're unstable, the board will have grounds for a no-confidence vote. This is psychological warfare. I gripped the paper, my nails scraping the thin sheet. He has no idea what I've been through. If I can survive being betrayed in my own home, a few lies won't kill me. Coleman gave a slight nod, his gaze softening for a moment. That's the spirit you need to keep, Josephine. But be ready, he'll play dirtier. One afternoon when I had just returned from the office, there was a cream-colored envelope on the glass table in the living room, with no sender's name. Security said a man had dropped it off and left immediately. I opened it and my heart sank when I recognized the handwriting. Joe, I know you're being cornered. Even though we made mistakes, I can't stand by and watch you be crushed by this ruthless world. If you give me a chance, I'll protect you. I understand the law, I understand the market, and we used to be a team. Let me stand by your side again. Adam. I read it over and over, my hand shaking not from emotion but from anger. The man who stole 10 years of my youth, who sold me out to run after a younger woman, now pretending to be a knight. I crumpled the letter and hurled it into the trash. He thinks he can come back with a few sweet lines, I whispered. He has no idea I'm not the same. But the real shock hit when Clara appeared. Clara, my half-sister whom I had never met. When I was little, my mother only mentioned the girl in passing. An old secret of my father's before he married her. We had no contact, and in my memory, Clara was a blurry shadow in the family. Yet one evening when I came back after a long day at Helios headquarters, the receptionist called up. There's a woman claiming to be your sister who wants to see you immediately. I went down to the lobby, and in front of me stood a woman around 30 tall, with wavy brown hair and bright blue eyes brimming with emotion. Josephine, she said, her voice trembling. Don't you recognize me? I'm Clara. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't know how to react and blurted out, Clara, is it really you? I know we never had a chance. But when I saw you in the news, I couldn't stay silent anymore. I want to be by your side to help you. I brought her up to the penthouse. We sat in the living room and she told me she grew up with her mother in Vermont, always hearing that her sister lived a different, distant life. I used to think you'd hate me. But when I saw you standing alone against a whole corporation, I couldn't take it. I want to be your real sister. I listened, emotions surging, suspicion but also a hunger to have family. After so many lonely years, after losing Adam, after my own family's indifference, the thought of a sister reaching out made me waver. Are you sure you want to step into this? I asked softly. This isn't an easy fight. It could destroy you. Clara took my hand, her eyes shining. I'm not afraid. I'm afraid of leaving you alone. In the days that followed, Clara appeared beside me at a few small events. The press began to take notice. Billionaire reunites with long-lost sister. A new source of strength? I felt lighter having someone to share things with. Dinners in the cold penthouse now had the laughter of two sisters, and little stories about childhood we had never lived together. But I had no idea that behind that gentle smile, Clara was secretly meeting Mercer. One night, while I slept soundly, she sent an email from her own laptop. Scans of notes I had taken from Edward Blackwell's archives, documents never made public. In a quiet midtown bar, Mercer took them, satisfaction flashing in his eyes. You've done well, he said coldly. Keep making your sister trust you. When the time comes, I'll tell you what to do. Clara pressed her lips together, a flicker of conflict crossing her face, then she nodded. I remained unaware, not suspecting a thing. One evening as I sat rereading Edward's will, Clara brought me a cup of hot tea, set it down and whispered, Sis, I believe you'll win. Don't let anyone make you think otherwise. I smiled, my eyes blurring with emotion. Thank you, Clara. With you here, I don't feel alone anymore. As the storms rolled on, I felt pushed into a chess match where every move could be a trap. Mercer attacked through the media. Adam lurked for a way back, and Clara, the lost sister I was trying to trust, stayed by my side with a tender smile. But deep inside, an alarm kept ringing. I needed a true ally, not someone borrowing the title of family or an ex-husband playing the savior. And then fate led me to Dr. Henry Lawson. The meeting took place in a low building tucked inside a research campus in suburban New Jersey. Nothing like Helios's gleaming Manhattan offices. I was led into an old lab, the air mingling the smell of chemicals and paper. An elderly man with snow-white hair, thin but with sharp eyes, stayed waiting by a table piled with drawings and models. He wore a worn lab coat, ink from a technical pen still on his hand. "Miss Hayes," he said, voice hoarse but firm, "I'm Henry Lawson. Edward mentioned you." I tilted my head, unable to hide my surprise. "Mr. Blackwell mentioned me?" Lawson nodded, his gaze deep. He feared that one day Mercer would turn Helios into a machine that devours profit and forgets responsibility to the world. Edward believed that only someone who still honors memory and truth could stop that. "When he learned you were a librarian, he laughed and said, 'Sometimes the keeper of books is the keeper of a company's soul.'" His words tightened my chest. In days when public opinion buried me, that sentence felt like a rope pulling me back from the dark. Lawson dragged a small safe from the corner. The safe was old, its steel scuffed, a yellowed paper label still stuck to its face. He set it on the table and pushed it toward me. "Edward kept these outside the system," he said slowly. "He never fully trusted computers. He believed paper has memory while data is easily erased. This is the part of his legacy he left with me, instructing that if Mercer ever overran things, I should hand it to the person he chose." I opened the safe, my palms damp. Inside were thick files tied with old twine, handwritten spreadsheets, even letters. I flipped through them, Edward Blackwell's handwriting clear and forthright, never evasive. What emerged chilled me. For years Mercer had used a string of shell companies to siphon money from Helios's major projects. The funds were routed through multiple countries and ended up in a series of funds in the Cayman Islands. "My God, this is embezzlement on a massive scale." Lawson nodded, his face heavy. Edward suspected it long ago but didn't have the strength to confront it. He left the trail for his successor. "And now that's you." I kept reading, my finger stopping at a financial diagram drawn in blue ink. A thick arrow ran from a shell company called Astra Holdings to a Cayman fund. Next to it was a name that made my breath catch. Adam Davenport. I couldn't believe my eyes. I looked closer. Each transfer line, each printed electronic signature. All of it pointed to Adam, my ex-husband. "No way," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Adam, he's tied to Mercer?" Lawson looked at me with sympathy. "It appears so. Mercer never works alone. He always needs pawns who can use their names to distract. Adam, maybe just one link in that chain." I sank into a chair, my hands shaking. Everything Adam had done, the promises in the letter, the talk show appearance with that pitying face, was part of a bigger plan. He hadn't come back out of love or concern. He had come back for money, for power, for standing in Mercer's shadow. "Miss Hayes," Lawson said in a low voice, "I know this truth hurts. But remember, evidence is the strongest weapon. Edward preserved it for you. If you're brave enough, you can stop Mercer once and for all." I folded the file and hugged it to my chest as if it were part of me. Pain roiled inside me, but a flame of resolve surged higher. Adam betrayed me once, and now he had betrayed the last trust one had left. Mercer thought he could use him to pull me down. But this very rope would bind Mercer tight. "Thank you. I won't let Edward down. And I won't let this company become ground poisoned by greed." He nodded gently, his trembling hand resting on my shoulder. "Edward chose well. Remember, Josephine, legacy isn't wealth. Legacy is the truth that must be kept." That night, back at the penthouse, I sat alone by the glass, looking down at the bright Manhattan grid. On the table, Lawson's safe files lay open, the blue ink lines leading me to the heart of it. Every arrow converged on the same point: Mercer and Adam. I knew the next battle wouldn't only unfold in Helios's boardroom, it would be fought in my heart. But this time I wouldn't tremble. I had a weapon in my hands, pages that cannot be erased. And I would use them as Edward believed, to protect the company's soul he spent a lifetime building. The Metropolitan Museum of Art Gala was the biggest event of the year. The press called it the Night of Power and Diamonds, where every step on the red carpet was recorded, analyzed, and debated. I knew Mercer would choose this stage to launch his decisive strike. And he did not disappoint. From the penthouse, I watched the opening live on the screen and saw Mercer appear amid blinding flashes. He wore a black tuxedo walking beside Adam and Savannah. Adam wore a sorrowful look, an actor playing to perfection the role of the ex-husband, concerned for my sanity. Savannah showed off her round belly in a fitted white dress, her hand always resting on it as if to underline every lie. Reporters jostled, cameras flickered. A female host held a microphone toward Mercer. Mr. Mercer, there are many rumors that Helios is falling into turmoil under the new leadership. What do you think? Mercer curled his lip, glanced at Adam, then replied, I pity Helios. This company was built on a solid foundation, but now, I fear that legacy is being placed in the hands of someone not ready. Adam added, voice trembling, Josephine used to be gentle, but this pressure, it's too much. I worry for her truly. And as I'm about to become a father, I want stability all the more. Savannah smiled softly, patting her belly. The most important thing is to think of the future. A child needs a safe environment, not chaos. Murmurs rose. Clearly they had prepared to turn me into someone out of control in front of the whole world. The limousine brought me to the museum gates just as the lights reached a crescendo. When the door opened, every camera turned toward me. I stepped out in a sapphire velvet gown, the off-shoulder bodice fitted close, the hem skimming lightly over the stone steps. At my neck was the Blackwell diamond, the legendary stone Edward had kept as a symbol of legacy. A ripple of whispers spread across the red carpet. I heard someone exclaim, she's here, with the diamond. Flashes burst like lightning. I took steady steps, my heart pounding, but my face held a calm smile. Inside the grand hall, Mercer was giving a speech, the audience listening in silence. He spoke of the decline of old values, and the necessity of an experienced hand. Adam hovered behind him, face full of sorrow, while Savannah glowed under the lights, her eyes dropping to her belly with heavy implication. As Mercer finished, I stepped out from the wings, my heels echoing across the hall. The entire room whipped around. Ladies and gentlemen, I said clearly without a tremor, forgive the interruption. But if we are speaking about the truth and the legacy of Helios, there are a few things that must be clarified. The air tightened. Mercer paused, then put on a false smile. Josephine, I'm afraid this isn't the appropriate time, I think. I cut in, voice even but sharp. When the truth has been hidden too long, anywhere can be appropriate. I signaled. An aide Coleman had placed there, handed me a file. I opened it, the white pages stark under the spotlights. These are documents Edward Blackwell kept outside the system, which I now make public. I held up several pages. Evidence shows that Mr. Charles Mercer used at least 8 shell companies to embezzle billions of dollars from Helios over the past 10 years. All of it was routed to funds in the Cayman Islands. The hall erupted, cameras firing non-stop. Mercer blanched, lips pressed tight. I turned another page and looked straight at Adam. And here is proof that Adam Davenport, my former husband, engaged in insider trading, using Helios's confidential information for illegal gain. The deposits into his personal accounts matched the funds run by Mercer. Adam stepped back, face ashen. He stammered, That's a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? I echoed, my voice ringing through the hall. You lied to me for 10 years, betrayed me, and now you want to betray Helios. There is no misunderstanding here. The hall crackled with whispers. Then I turned to Savannah. She still tried to hold a smile, one hand cradling her belly. And Savannah, I continued, my voice like steel, you've used a pregnancy narrative to sway public sympathy. But according to independent time-stamped documentation, the conception date does not match any time Adam was with you. Plainly put, that child is not Adam's. A roar swept the room. Cameras zoomed in, reporters shouted. Is that true, Savannah? Did you betray Adam too? Savannah's face went pale, her lips trembling. The mask of the future heir's mother shattered on the spot. I closed the file, my tone dropping. Edward taught me that profit without conscience never lasts. Profit built on lies and betrayal will never be a legacy. Tonight, before all of you and the world's media, I affirm, Helios does not belong to the greedy nor to opportunists. It belongs to the truth, and I will protect that truth. The room exploded. Half the audience rose in applause, the rest buzzed with talk, cameras panning everywhere. Mercer's face purpled, his lips quivering, but he could not refute. Adam stared at the floor like a defeated man, and Savannah buried her face in her hands, mascara streaking down her cheeks. I turned and stepped down from the podium. Under the spotlights, I heard Coleman whisper as he came beside me, "That was checkmate." I gave a slight nod, walking on through the noise and flashing lights, knowing that from that moment, the board had completely changed. After the Met Gala, the news spread faster than any wildfire. The next morning, I entered Helios's boardroom with the eyes of the world upon me. The board members who had stayed silent for months no longer hid their fury at the evidence I had revealed. Charles Mercer sat at the head of the table, his face rigid. He tried to look composed, but the beads of sweat at his temples betrayed him. An elderly board member stepped and said in a steely voice, "Mr. Mercer, in light of this incontrovertible documentation, we vote to terminate you immediately. For cause." Mercer not only lost his position, he lost his pension benefits, his preferred shares, and would now face criminal investigation. He sprang up, pointing at me, "You'll regret this, Josephine. You don't understand the rules of this game." I kept my gaze calm and answered evenly, "Your game is over. And Helios is no longer your chessboard." Security entered and escorted Mercer out. The door closed, leaving a heavy silence. I knew this was not only the fall of a greedy man, but the beginning of a new era for the company. A few days later, news of Adam Davenport's arrest appeared on every channel. The Securities and Exchange Commission issued a warrant for insider trading and money laundering through offshore funds. The image of Adam in a rumpled suit, hands cuffed, leaving his luxury apartment with a gaunt face made him unrecognizable from the man who once swore vows to me. A reporter shouted, "Mr. Davenport, do you have anything to say to your ex-wife?" He kept his head down, saying nothing. And I understood. This time words could no longer deceive anyone. But the deepest wound came from Clara. I had trusted her, opened my heart after years of loneliness. Yet when the broader investigation unfolded, Coleman handed me the emails she had sent Mercer. Secret snapshots of documents, memos I had read in my private room. That evening I called Clara into the small library in the penthouse. Soft light fell across my sister's face. The blue eyes that once won my trust could no longer meet mine. "Clara," I asked hoarsely, "why?" She was silent, twisting her hands together. At last she blurted, I needed money. Mercer promised to take care of me if I gave him a few documents. Thought you would never fall. I didn't expect. You didn't expect me to find out, or you didn't expect me to feel pain." Clara burst into tears. "I'm sorry, Josephine. I didn't know any other way to survive." Inside me, pity mixed with a coldness I couldn't erase. I had learned that blood ties cannot blind us to betrayal. "I forgive you in my heart, but we can no longer be sisters," I said slowly. "From today on, you have nothing to do with Helios and nothing to do with me." Clara sobbed, but I turned away, leaving behind her strangled cries. I knew this decision would haunt me, but sometimes to protect something greater I had to let go. When the storm passed, I sat alone in the office on the 80th floor, looking out at the New York sky growing light. I held a power I had never imagined, all of Helios Global, a corporation worth tens of billions of dollars. But I also carried scars in my heart, from Adam, from Mercer, and from my own sister. I remembered Lawson's words. If I held power only to exact revenge, I would be no different from Mercer. So I called a press conference. Hundreds of reporters packed the hall. I stepped to the podium, not in a ball gown or glittering jewelry, but in a simple navy suit. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, "Edward Blackwell did not leave Helios to me so I could become a queen in an ivory tower. He left it so I could protect a vision. That profit must go hand in hand with responsibility. Therefore, today I announce the establishment of the Blackwell Foundation. The foundation will receive 10% of Helios's annual profits, dedicated to heritage preservation, clean water, and renewable energy projects." The hall stirred, then gradually filled with applause. In many eyes I saw not just admiration but trust. Something Mercer could never win. That night, back at the penthouse, I sat by the glass, watching the city lights reflect on Central Park's lake. I whispered to myself, "Edward, you can rest easy now. Your legacy will not be buried." And in that moment, I stopped seeing myself as the woman abandoned with a $12,000 check. I was someone who had passed through betrayal, lingered in the midst of power, and chosen to redefine it. A year later, I stood in the grand hall of the New York Public Library, warm golden light falling from antique crystal chandeliers. On the gleaming brass plaque at the entrance, the words "The Blackwell Reading Room" shimmered like a promise kept. It was the last wish I dedicated to Edward, turning part of the fortune he left into a place to preserve knowledge for the next generation. No more prying eyes, no more boardroom battles. Today I was surrounded by the cheerful voices of children and students. Hundreds attended the opening. Journalists, scientists, ordinary citizens. But what moved me most was not the cameras, but the scene before me. Long walnut shelves filled with carefully selected books on history, culture, and science. A cozy reading nook with velvet armchairs the color of wine. Richard Coleman approached, relief plain on his face. "Josephine, you've turned that legacy into something alive. Edward would be very proud." I smiled. I only did what he believed. That knowledge is the most enduring thing. The crowd quieted as I stepped onto a small platform in the center of the room. "I once thought," I began, my voice echoing through the space, "that legacy meant power, those massive numbers on a balance sheet. But looking back after a year, I realize, true legacy lives in the pages of books, in our ability to pass to the next generation of faith in truth and integrity. The Blackwell Reading Room is proof that money can change the fate of a company, but only knowledge can change an entire community." Thunderous applause. I looked to the front row and saw Lawson, the man who had handed me the old safe, nodding, pride shining in his eyes. After the ceremony, as people spread out to explore the new room, I quietly walked to a reading corner. There, a girl of about 10 perched on a chair, engrossed in a thick book about the stars. Her brown hair fell across her forehead, her finger tracing each line as if afraid to miss anything. In that instant, an image of my younger self returned. The girl Josephine in a university library in Maine, devouring histories of dynasties, dreaming of a fairer world, mocked as old-fashioned, outdated. I bent down and asked gently, "Is the book good?" She looked up, eyes sparkling. "It's really good. I want to be an astronomer someday." I smiled, lightly smoothing her hair. "Then read as much as you can. Don't let anyone tell you that dream is too far away." She giggled, hugging the book like a treasure. Late that night, after the crowd had gone, I lingered in the reading room, walking along the new shelves. Warm light lay across each spine, and I seemed to hear Edward Blackwell's voice somewhere. "Profit built on poisoned ground is no profit at all." Outside the glass, New York shone like an endless symphony. I closed my eyes, drew a long breath, and knew I had finally found the answer. Power is not for domination but for planting seeds. And the seeds were sprouting right here among these imperishable pages. And that is my journey, from a woman pushed to the margins, left with a few divorce papers and a shattered heart, to standing here among glowing shelves, watching young eyes discover their dreams. But I know each person who hears this story will feel something different. If it were you, what do you think is the most important thing one can leave to the next generation? Money, fame, or integrity and knowledge? I truly want to hear your thoughts, because sometimes the simplest shares are what light the way on our journey. If this story touched you, please hit like and leave a comment so we can talk. And don't forget to follow the channel so you won't miss the next stories. Stories about family, betrayal, love, and the strength to stand up and begin again. Because sometimes, a story at the right moment can change the way we see life.